All right. Good morning, evening, everyone. How are we doing today?
Good, good, good.
Good,
Good.
good.
Um, I think this was a very good reading. Was a very, very good reading. I want to, I mean, I want to emphasize on. I'm gonna go in order of things from the one that I know we will finish quite quickly into the ones that I know have a little bit more meat to discuss. So the one I want to begin with, the Boy Scout rule. Whenever you or leave the place better than what you entered or found it. Yeah. So, can someone please tell me what that means in the context of code? What does it mean to apply the Boy Scout rule in the context of a project, in the context of a, yeah.
I mean, that's a bit of out of my experience, but I guess if I'm working on a piece of code that I'm working on a new piece of code that is not my own, or even if it's my own, there's always opportunity to make it a bit better. Maybe a variable you can name a variable in a better way. You can do split a function or make another function, stuff like that. So make it better in maybe can be better can mean better readable, more
Mm.
concise, less clunky or
But there's a mindset about this. Everything you said is correct, but there's a mindset. Whenever the author says this concept of the Boy Scout rule, what he means is not like, okay, let me start. You're working on a project. Let's say we're all working on a company. We have different parts of the code. I don't come in today and say, okay, today I'm gonna go into Enrique's work and I'm gonna see what I can clean up in there. Or today I'm gonna go and look into the code that Khaled did yesterday and let me see what I can do. No, the idea of this is let's say I'm doing my stuff, whatever it is, I'm doing my role. And in the process of solving my feature, just for the sake of the argument, let's say that I go to a module that has nothing to do with my responsibility. I just need to go there to read, to find out if here is what I'm looking for. And in this process of reading stuff, of navigating code, I stumble upon what he would call some trash, and what in the equivalent of going to the park and find trash. Instead of leaving it there and continue on your own, in the context of the park, you say, hey, let me pick up this trash, let me put it there. I didn't come here to pick up trash, I came here to play. But I found this trash, hey, it doesn't cost me anything, let me just throw it away. The concept is the same. You're reading your code, you're doing your stuff, and in the process of you doing your stuff, you stumble upon an opportunity to improve. Even though your intention was never to improve, even though your intention was never to modify that code, you might have found something interesting, something minor. You say, hey, let me fix this really quickly. It has nothing to do with what I'm doing, but it's it's an opportunity to improve it. It's an opportunity to improve it. And again, you don't have to do this heroic act. I'm gonna clean the entire park. No. You see a and then he gives some examples. You see a variable name that you're like, what in the world is this thing? Okay, it means this. Let me refactor it. Boom. A minor refactor, a minor change, changing a variable name. But the impact can be big. And if you start adding those things little by little, if we are a team and in our own context, we apply that knowledge. Enrique is doing whatever. He stumbles upon a variable naming that I wrote that maybe was not that clear. Overall, the quality of the project will eventually continue to grow. That is the mindset. You don't come with let me do an heroic act and clean the entire park. No, you say let me go. I'm gonna play football. I found this little trash. Oh, let me clean it. And it has to be as simple as just finding a can in the dirt and saving it. And in the context of programming, renaming a variable, splitting a function, whatever it is, that could improve the overall quality. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind when you are developing, because sometimes we might say, okay, this is a refactoring, this is a terrible variable name, but this has nothing to do with me, so I just leave it there. That would be the equivalent of you going to the park and saying, oh, there's trash here. I don't care. Leave that there. It's not my problem. It's not my stuff. You see, it's a mindset. Enrique, go ahead, please.
yes. Uh, question. Is that a common thing in the industry that, for example, let's imagine that you walk into the module to read, to do your stuff, and then you find a variable that is not good, let's say not good. And then you're like, oh, I want to refactor it. And then how is the process? You just do it and do a pull request, and then the administrator of the code is the one that accepts the code, or
It
is
depends. It depends. So first, it's a mindset. A lot of people might see the trash and they just say, this is not mine. This has nothing to do with my stuff. I just leave it there. So the first question we have to ask, how common is it for people and companies to have this culture of wanting to improve not only my code, but the team's code? That's the first question. And I don't really know the answer. What I can tell you is from where I have worked, especially the job I had before, we did have this culture of if you find something, basically of applying this rule. Basically, we did our best to apply that rule, and the process was nothing out of the ordinary. I would do my stuff, right? I would make the change. I will make a commit for that change, yeah, in the same branch where I'm working. All of you have learned about conventional commits. We followed conventional commits. So I would just have refactoring, improving variable name. And if I felt that there was a need for an explanation, I would put it in the description of the commit. And that's it. I will make a pull request, people will review it, and they might see the refactoring. And worst case scenario, they ask what was the motivation behind it, and I explain. And that's it. And there's always conversation. So yeah, that's usually the process. And if you work in sorry, Khaled, and if you work in mob programming, then we are all sitting in the computer and we say, wait, let's fix that trash before continuing. We fix the stuff and we move on. You see? So it depends. Khaled, go ahead, please.
I just want to say that this is a positive thing to do. It strengthens the relation on the team. Yes, what we do actually in this current internship, that we suggest, like if somebody work in a task, we did that, not a lot, but we did it many times. Like I suggest to change this name, for example, of this variable, because it will be more compatible with the application and this stuff. And it's very good things to do.
Exactly. So always have this mindset. But the idea is, remember, you don't have to come up with this. Today is going to be my heroic day. That's not the idea behind it. It's just you're doing your stuff. You stumble upon, hey, let me fix it, and you move on. Good. Yes. This can also be applied. Of course, I would say it's a little bit. So you can be working on your own code. Let's say one of the homework projects, and you are working on implementing screen A. But just because you needed to see a little bit of idea, you went to screen B. You have nothing to do there. You just want to read what you did on screen B to use it as inspiration. And in the process of reading, you might stumble upon something, a variable name, a function, or whatever. And instead of just saying, I'll fix it later, hey, just fix the thing right there. You see, if you find a variable that is not good, even though your intention was never to do any change on screen B, hey, just fix it and get over with. A lot of people say, I'm going to put it on my to-do. Why not just fix it there and then? Because it's a quick fix. And in that way, you don't even have to put a to-do. You see? So always keep that mindset. If you find an error or an area of improvement that you know it doesn't take more than 5-10 minutes, just fix the thing, because putting it in a to-do sometimes is equivalent to you will never do it. You see? So keep that mindset. It's a mindset. Good. I want to speak about the first chapter, before you refactor. All of you are familiar with refactoring, all of you, because throughout the course, throughout the education, I have always spoken about the importance of refactoring. I have always spoken about first you make it work and forget about the perfect solution. Just make the thing work, and then you start refactoring. And that is all good when you are the only one on the project. But when you start working as a team, now it's not only you. And I have to tell you, I don't know if it's the nature of developers I don't know if it's the nature of humans. I don't know what it is, but we always feel that we can do it better than whoever wrote the code first. Call it ego, call it whatever you want, but it is a challenge that all of us have to struggle. And a lot of people confuse the difference between making a change because it actually makes a real improvement versus making a change just because it satisfies my personal preference. You see what I mean? There is a total difference between I'm going to refactor this code because it will actually improve the code's readability, it will actually improve the performance, versus saying, I don't write the code like this. This is perfectly okay. I don't write it like that. I want to refactor it so that it is the way I like it. I like 2 spaces, they have 1, let me refactor. Why? Who cares? It's just an example. You have to fight against that. You have to ask yourself, am I refactoring this code because I'm actually doing a real improvement? Or now, am I refactoring this code because I just want to feel that it looks the way I want it to look? You see, you have to always combat that, and people do forget that. And I have struggled with that, meaning in the sense of dealing with people that do that in the past. And it is a struggle because sometimes a change is not real an improvement, it's just a different way of saying the same thing, but you're not really adding any value. You see what I mean? That example, 2 plus 2 is 4, 3 plus 1 is 4. Unless you only want to work with, there's a very specific reason to only work with even numbers, then it doesn't matter which way you do it. There's no real difference between those 2 implementations. Keep that in mind. There's people who like odd numbers and they say, no, I'm going to change from 2 plus 2 to 3 plus 1. But why? Just because you like it. That's not a reason for changing it. Keep that in mind. Any questions about that? That is on page 13, the second dot. Personal preferences and ego should not get in the way. And you are going to experience it both ways. People applying it to you, and in some cases, you not intentionally applying it to other people, saying, hey, let's change this. But when you ask yourself, why do I want to change this? It's because I actually like it like that. But is there a reason for change? Not really. So let it be. Let it be. Any thoughts on that aspect? Any thoughts on that aspect? Khaled, yes, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I think there is some standard in programming that people follow. So
exactly.
This will make the thing is easier to follow it, not just giving an opinion, or there is a standard.
That is why it is so important from the very beginning that you configure your program, your code, your app to have detect. My rule is this: if detect accepts it, then don't bother me. If the tool, that is like the objective way of measuring it, detect is a tool that is supposed to determine whether or not the code follows the standard. My code is following the standard. From there on, it's a bunch of personal preferences. For example, sometimes it is okay to put 2 lines. Detect will not complain. And you can put 1 line in between and Detect will not complain. To be honest, that is one of the arguments I used to have with people. People say there should be no line, but why? The tool is accepting it and I don't see any problem with having the line or not having the line. So things like that, minor things that the line doesn't add readability or doesn't remove readability. You just want me to add the line because you are used to adding that line in the beginning, or for that matter, removing that line in the beginning. So that is the reason for tools like Detect and all that stuff. So yeah, but even then, preferences can go on top of that because there are certain things that either way you do it, Detect will accept it. Then preferences come. But yes, absolutely, you should always have some type of linter that makes sure that your code follows the standard of whichever programming language you're working with. And also to facilitate, because imagine if I had to fix all the formatting myself, that would be horrible. Detect at least does it for you, so you don't have to really worry about it. I don't think about like the number of spaces between var. I mean, now after using DTEX so much, I have kind of identified certain things, but otherwise I don't worry about that. I just let DTEX correct the code for me, and that's it. So yeah, but good there. Here, the second one, avoid the temptation to rewrite everything. That's another problem. You have a project and you say, look, I'm gonna delete all of this stuff. I'm gonna start brand new. No, unless there's a, which usually there's no, but unless there's a very, very clear and reason for saying, look, we need to delete all that stuff. Don't do it. Do it in a progressive manner, because that code that you're deleting represents, as the author says, hours of work, represents effort, and represents implementations that probably are taking into account stuff that your new solution might not be taking into account, because either you don't have the full picture or whatever it could be. So the idea is not to just say, let's delete and create everything from scratch. No, refactor and make it in a progressive manner. Remember, code is like a human. It is evolving, it is changing, it progresses over time. Yeah. So you just don't go from H0 to H10, you progressively mature. Same for this thing. Have this mindset of, look, I'm not going to throw the entire thing, because it is very unlikely that the entire thing is broken or it's bad. Just refactor little by little. And if we go back to the Boy Scout rule, ideally, if everyone cleaned it up a little bit, the code will have never reached that state of being broken. The only scenario where I have actually said this entire folder delete, the only scenario where I have done something like that is when there is a feature or a behavior in my app that we have agreed, look, this behavior is no longer important. We don't need this anymore. We don't need this anymore. Delete it. It's a wonderful feeling, because now you know there's significantly less code to worry about. But just saying, I'm going to delete it to create it from scratch. No. The only way I have said all of this code is being deleted is because all of that code is associated to a feature, to a behavior that is no longer relevant for the product. That's the only reason. Otherwise, you refactor little by little. Any thoughts on that? That's another one, because that's another, going back to the ego stuff. We want to put our mark everywhere in the code. We want to say, I developed that and that and that, because also you can see that in the IDEs. You can see who wrote the lines. And sometimes people just want to make changes so that their name appears there. And the change is not necessarily providing any value other than the badge of saying, I did this. You see what I mean? So keep that in mind. Remember, I want you to keep this in mind. There has to be a motivation behind a refactoring, and the motivation should be linked to the improvement of the quality of the code. If the refactoring that you're doing is not really improving in any way the quality of the code, then what's the purpose of the refactoring? Why are we refactoring? If we don't, if we're not improving the quality of the code, if we're not fixing a bug, if we're not introducing a feature, why am I changing this code? Just let it be, especially if it's working fine. So keep that mindset. Keep that mindset. Ask yourself, why am I refactoring? Especially if it's someone else's code, because that's someone else will say, wait a minute, why are you changing my code? You see, you will not like other people going to your code and changing all your stuff out of nowhere. If the code has no bugs or there's no new feature or anything like that, you will not like other people changing your code just like that. We are a little bit jealous to our code. So other people are the same. By jealous, I mean like you want to protect it. Yeah. But anyway, any thoughts on that? Any thoughts on that?
No, it's just the ego. It's just how it is. That applies not only for developers, that apply for chefs, that apply for bartenders, that apply for pretty much any vocation that you go. we are competitive by nature and we like our stuff our way, and we are, how you say, we're a bit stubborn to see sometimes that our way is not the best way. So yeah, it's like a human thing, and it's fascinating that in a really pocketed thing that is developing, because it's you can say objectively this is bad and it is good. It's amazing that it actually happens as well, because we are supposed to be objective because the code is the code is king. So, but we still are subjective in many ways.
Exactly. Good. Any more thoughts? Any more thoughts before we continue? No. Okay. There's this page 18. Check your code first before looking to blame others. Okay. There's a lot of. To be honest, I have not found that many people who say, "Look, my code is not the problem. It's the compiler, or it's Android Studio, or it's IntelliJ." I mean, sometimes you say, what the hell is this thing doing? Let me at least restart it. And usually that's enough. But so I'm not going to spend too much time on that. What I do want to spend the time is on two aspects. On page 19, I like, in the first two paragraphs, I like two statements that he says. The first one, question your own assumptions and the assumptions of others. What do I mean by that? One of the best skills that I feel we can have, and this doesn't only apply to programming, but in any aspect of life, is being able to ask questions. But more than that, being able to ask good questions and not just take for granted whatever information is given to us. So ask yourself, wait, we need to implement this feature. Okay, yeah, and you implement it. Well, wait a minute. Why do we need to do this? What is the motivation behind it? And it's not about challenging your boss and telling him or her that he's wrong, but it's to understand, because a lot of people, there's a problem, right? And they want to not only give you the problem, but they even want to tell you what's the solution. No, wait a minute. Let me understand what's the problem, and let me make sure that this is the best solution for this problem. So in a lot of cases, we're just given solutions and we accept, this is the only way of doing it. No, challenge your assumptions, other people's assumptions. And notice that I'm speaking very generic, because I do believe that this applies way beyond programming. Way beyond programming. A very simple example, I really dislike when I go to X place, it doesn't really matter, and I say, look, I have this problem, and then whoever is in the other side tells me, okay, you need to do this, and that, and here it is. I'm like, wait a minute, why are you offering me all of this stuff? Is that the only solution I have? And usually no, what they want is more money. So you say you have to question all these assumptions and your own. And I really think that applies not only to code, but beyond that. And the second one, this one is really programming related. This applies two ways. And I know, at least with the Khaled group, because they already fit and they're almost done. I haven't had the chance to do it with your group that much because your group hasn't really started Android yet. But I always tell, when people say, Humberto, I have this problem, I have this problem, I have this problem. Usually, Khaled, you might correct me if I'm wrong, but I will always say one of two things. One, send me some details about how to reproduce this problem and give me a little bit of information, because if I cannot reproduce the problem, what makes you think that I will be able to A, understand the problem, and B, solve the problem? So what is the point I'm trying to transmit? Two, whenever someone, let's say you're working in an application and someone tells you, hey, I have a problem, your app is not working, your app crashes, what is the first question that you should ask that person?
Did you read why it's broken? What's the crash? Look at
No, more than that. So I am not a developer. I don't know anything. And I go, hey, Khaled,
Okay.
I'm using your app and the app crashes. What's the first question that you should ask me?
Show
Based
it
on
to
What
me.
did you do to make it crash?
exactly what did you do to make it crash? And by saying what did you do is not that you're blaming the person. Maybe we'll have to rephrase the question in a different way. It will be more, what are the steps that you took in order for that to happen? The reason for that, again, is not to blame the person, but it's to so that you are going to be able to then reproduce the problem. Because as soon as you reproduce the problem in a consistent manner, you are in a much better position to solve that problem. But if the person tells me, look, I opened the app, or no, they just tell, hey, your app crashes. Okay, that's unfortunate. What steps did you do? I don't know. So then how am I supposed to reproduce the problem to therefore solve the problem? I won't be able to do it. So from your perspective, if you are a developer and someone comes to you telling a problem, ask for steps on how to reproduce it. Now I'm turning the tables. You are a developer and you are using someone else's code. Before or whenever you go to complain and tell, hey, your application it's crashing, what should you include in your complaint message?
The steps.
The steps. I know. So, for example, a few months ago, I was using an app. It was an indie developer, yeah, but the app, not the app, it was an application for the computer. The app, it was exactly what I needed. And by an indie developer, it's a person just like you and I, just an indie developer. They created something, they put it on the store. I bought it. I needed it. The app started to crash, and I'm like, what? And then eventually, of course, my programming mindset kicked in, even though that project was not mine. And I said, okay, let me try to reproduce this stuff. And I eventually found how to reproduce it because I couldn't understand if it was me doing something wrong. I don't know. So eventually I say, okay, there is a bug here. This thing is not working. So what do you think I did? I didn't only tell the guy the steps. I actually, as you might know, I recorded a video of me doing the stuff, and I told, hey, look, this is happening, here's the information, if you can please solve it, it would be really nice. And a few weeks later, the guy comes with a solution, and of course he appreciated it because I gave him everything he needed to be able to solve the problem. If I would have not done that, either it would have taken longer to get the solution or the fix, or probably he would not have been even able to fix the problem since he would have not been able to reproduce it. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Once again, it's a mindset. And once again, that mindset can be applied to other aspects of life as well. Yeah. Any thoughts on that? Any thoughts on that?
No, it's like if you see a problem, the first thing that you do is like, okay, it happens. What did I did for it to happen? So you try to do the exact same thing again, and then the exact same thing again, and then the exact same thing again.
Exactly.
It's like troubleshooting a car or stuff, just like.
So that is something I have to, of course, help the students as well, because especially in the beginning of the Android, people would just say, Humberto, my application doesn't crash. Sorry, my application doesn't work. And in my head, it's like, I know I'm the teacher, but I'm not a magician. So I have no idea why it is crashing. I'm as lost as you are based on the information that you have given me. So please give me a little bit more information. Yeah. So that's why eventually towards the end, probably you have seen it, Khaled, people were sending a bit more information, maybe details, a bit of context, screenshots, things like that, because probably they know that I was going to ask for it. But hopefully they were sending it not only because they know I was going to ask for it, but they understood why I was asking for it. So make sure to have that mindset. Very, very, very important. And last but not least, associated to this, although you might not complain saying, oh, the compiler is broken. Let's say that you are the Android team and you're working with a backend team. If your app is trying to get data from the internet and it crashes for some reason, you might be blaming the backend team. We had unfortunately they're not here, but we have a student, or they're in their internships, and they had that problem actually. In the beginning, they thought it was them. And it got to a point that I said, look, where's this backend coming from? and I said, you need to speak to them. Guess at the end who had the problem.
A permission
backend.
thing.
The backend. You remember exactly.
No,
The backend.
but I can guess it was a permission thing. Like your
was,
IP doesn't
yeah.
have permission to.
It was something about a library in the backend. So in that case, the Android app has no. So yeah, you do have to first assume that it's your responsibility, but after a point, you need to make sure. Wait a minute, there's something way beyond here. I wouldn't go all the way to blame Mac or the compiler. I wouldn't go to that extent, but at the very least, if you're working with another team, hey, let me at least make sure that they are doing their part, because that does, at least I would say that might be a bit more common than blaming the database or blaming the compiler or Android Studio for your bug or something like that. Yeah. Good. Any last questions? I know we couldn't talk that much on choose your tool, but that's okay. But we were able to do the other two or the other three. Any thoughts? Any final thoughts? I don't want to overextend.
No, it's good. I really like the last paragraph of the choose your tools, like isolate the external tools using interfaces and stuff. That's really useful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that is what, no, go ahead, Murat.
Okay, my question. Okay, okay, I faced here when I was reading these articles or the book. So is the libraries. What do you mean by the libraries? Because Enrique, he did mention it once one time before in the coffee, but we didn't discuss it. It's like, okay, code into libraries where possible. It's like you, he mentioned that when you go to a company, they have their own libraries that you will work from the library. Oh, what is it about?
It depends. So for example, to give you a quick example, Retrofit, which module are you on Android?
202.
I get stuck in 202.
202. So you know that in 202 we use Retrofit to download data from the internet. Retrofit is a library. It's an external, it's a third-party library. You do not control Retrofit. You're using Retrofit. So when they mean create separation, mean you will have to use it, but do not propagate the usage of Retrofit everywhere. Because if tomorrow comes whatever is better, then making this change is going to be a pain you know where. So instead, encapsulate or hide the details of Retrofit into a module, a component, and then only there Retrofit is used. Everywhere else, you have your own view model or whatever. And in that way, if you have to swap Retrofit, the effect will only take place ideally in one place.
Okay.
And not all over the application. So that's what they say by creating boundaries. Create boundaries between the code that is part of the reason you create the DTO and the non-DTO. You do not control the DTO because that comes directly from the backend. So if tomorrow, if you start propagating the DTO all over the place, if there's a change in the backend, that change is going to propagate all over your code. But if you create the non-DTO version, you create a separation, meaning only whenever you are transforming the DTO to the non-DTO, that is where problems can arise if there are changes in the backend. Since your application do not use the DTO, if the backend change, your app will have no idea. Only when you're doing the conversion is where you will have to fix the problem. And that is what they mean by creating separations. But they, in this context, they meant by tools. So separate the tools and the usage of the tools from the rest of your code so that the impact of a possible change can be diminished.
In 202 will be like taking Glide, that we use Glide a lot.
For example.
And then moving it to a place and then just give Glide the function Glide. I give you the URL and you give me what I need. And then if we change Glide, we just go to the place, change Glide, and we still given the URL to the other place, and we still getting the same thing.
And ideally, the color of the Glide has no idea that Glide is actually being used. It only knows that by art of magic, my pictures are downloaded. It's the only thing it knows. I mean, it's not art of magic, but you get the point. So good. Very nice, very nice. Thank you everyone for today. Hopefully you like the session, but more importantly, hopefully you're liking the book.
The book is really
because
nice.
I mean, I know that the mob programming book could have been a little bit repetitive, but this one, hopefully, you do see the value that it offers.
Yeah.
I do think it's
It's
quite
more anecdotic. It's more like
nice.
practical,
Exactly.
empiric. It's more
E-
to the
e-
point.
Exactly. All right. In that case, then, thank you everyone for today. And actually,
Thank you.
for all of you, remember, I will see you on Monday,
Monday.
because some of you are going to be presenting and some other will be asking questions. So I look forward to seeing you all Monday.
Got it.
Hey to everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.